The morning air over northern France tasted of smoke and wet earth. It was late May 1940, and the road to Dunkirk was collapsing behind the British Expeditionary Force. Columns of refugees drifted past burnt-out cars, while distant artillery rolled like approaching thunder along a hedgerow outside the village of Wormhout. A handful of exhausted British infantrymen crouched low, rifles resting across their knees. Their backs were to the channel. Their orders were simple: hold for as long as humanly possible. Across the fields, movement stirred grey shapes emerging through the morning haze. German infantry, columns tightening. The sound of boots on hard soil grew louder, steadier, and more confident. The British line tightened its grip on rifles that, by 1940, many considered relics of an earlier war. The short magazine Lee-Enfield. The old smell then, the bolts began to work. Sharp metallic snaps cut the air, rhythmic and impossibly fast for a bolt-action weapon. Within seconds, a sheet of fire rolled across the advancing Germans. Precision, speed, and muscle memory forged by years of training turned a retreat into a stand. And to understand why these soldiers refused to abandon their old rifle, we must turn back to the beginning. At the turn of the 20th century, the British Empire spanned continents, but its military faced a quiet reckoning. Firearms technology was evolving rapidly. Bolt-action rifles had become the backbone of modern armies, yet no single weapon had captured the combination of reliability, firepower, and practicality that the British were about to embrace. The short magazine Lee-Enfield SMLE Mk3, formally adopted in 1907, was the culmination of decades of refinement. Its predecessors, the Lee-Metford and the Lee-Enfield rifles, had demonstrated that accuracy alone was not enough. Soldiers needed speed, ruggedness, and a magazine system that allowed them to unleash rapid, sustained fire in the chaos of battle. The SMLE's design reflected an understanding of human limitations. As much as mechanical innovation, its bolt operated on a cocoon closing system, reducing the effort required to chamber a round, while its 10-round detachable magazine loaded primarily with 5-round stripper clips gave infantry a sustained advantage over adversaries still constrained to 5-round rifles. The rifle's ergonomics were tailored for the soldier in the field. The balance, the weight, and the reach of the bolt handle were all designed so that repetitive firing over hours would not fatigue the shooter. Combined with a .303 British cartridge that balanced stopping power and manageable recoil, the SMLE became an extension of the soldier's arm, almost instinctively firing as fast as one could manipulate the bolt. British military doctrine in the years leading to World War I emphasized rapid, accurate fire as the cornerstone of infantry tactics. The army placed enormous value on musketry proficiency. The manual of musketry dictated not just stance and aim but rhythm and speed. The soldier was expected to deliver what would later be called the Mad Minute, firing 1520 aimed rounds per minute at 300 yards, with elite shooters exceeding 30 rounds. This emphasis on rapid volley fire, drilled into every regiment, was not merely tradition. It was a response to the tactical realities of modern combat, where the difference between a defensive stand and a rout could hinge on how fast a line of infantry could lay down suppressive fire. Training schools, such as the Army School of Musketry at Hythe, reinforced this doctrine. Recruits spent months mastering the rifle, often firing thousands of rounds under supervision to ingrain speed, accuracy, and consistency. Instructors emphasized muscle memory over conscious thought. The rifle had to become an extension of the body, its operations second nature. Even before the outbreak of war, British officers believed that a well-trained soldier with an SMLE could deliver fire equivalent to or exceeding that of a machine gun in short bursts. These beliefs would be tested with brutal immediacy once the European conflict began. By 1914, Europe had entered a precarious balance of alliances and rivalries. Germany had invested in the Gauher 98, a bolt-action rifle with excellent accuracy but a slower practical rate of fire due to its cock-opening bolt design. France had the Lebel and Berthier rifles, technologically advanced but logistically cumbersome. Britain, in contrast, entered the war with a relatively small professional army, but one armed with a rifle system optimized for speed and adaptability. The SMLE's magazine capacity and rapid bolt mechanism allowed sustained, accurate fire in conditions where enemies relied on slower cycling rifles. This mechanical advantage, coupled with rigorous musketry training, would allow a smaller, well-prepared force to punch above its weight. In the early clashes of the Great War, the SMLE was also engineered for the field conditions unique to Britain's global army. Tropical heat, desert dust, and the mud of Flanders all demanded a weapon that could continue firing when other rifles jammed or misfired. Its shorter bolt throw reduced the chance of malfunctions under stress, while the robust receiver and solid stock allowed it to endure drops, knocks, and long marches. Soldiers quickly learned that, unlike some contemporary designs, the SMLE could be stripped, cleaned, and reassembled with minimal tools, keeping the rifle serviceable in theaters where supply lines were precarious. As Europe slid into war, the SMLE became more than a weapon. It was a symbol of British military doctrine itself. It embodied a philosophy that valued training, reliability, and practical firepower over theoretical superiority. Officers and men alike trusted it, not because it was new or flashy, but because it performed consistently under fire. By the time the first British expeditionary force crossed the Channel in August 1914, the SMLE had already proven itself in imperial conflicts from South Africa to India, yet its true trial was only beginning. The soldiers who carried it would find that the rifle's reputed rate of fire and rugged dependability could alter the course of engagements and, sometimes, the perception of entire battles. This foundational reliability would be tested again decades later. The SMLE's design endured into World War II, not as a relic, but as a practical tool for a retreating force in May 1940, when discipline, training, and mechanical advantage collided with the chaos of a German blitz. To understand why British soldiers clung so fiercely to this rifle, we must first look deeper into the battlefield realities of World War I and the interwar evolution that preserved the SMLE's dominance. The first months of World War I were a brutal baptism for the SMLE. In August 1914, the British Expeditionary Force, fewer than 100,000 men, faced the German army at Mons. The SMLE, often mistaken by German troops for a light machine gun, proved its value almost immediately. Witness accounts describe waves of German infantry faltering under the volume of fire from British riflemen. Each soldier, trained in the mad minute, could deliver rapid, aimed volleys at ranges of 300 to 400 yards, creating the illusion of overwhelming firepower. This reputation was not mere legend. After-action reports noted that German officers were convinced they were under machine gun attack, a perception that delayed assaults and inflicted disproportionate casualties. Trench warfare soon tested the rifle further. Mud, rain, and freezing conditions of the Western Front would destroy lesser firearms, yet the SMLE persisted. Its short, smooth bolt resisted jamming even when filled with grit. Soldiers learned that a simple field stripping could restore functionality in minutes. In Ypres and the SMLE's rugged reliability allowed small units to hold positions against artillery barrages and infantry waves. Soldiers reported that in close quarters, dugouts, communication trenches, and shell craters, the rifle's compact design, combined with its 10-round magazine, allowed for rapid, repeated fire without exhausting the user. Its effectiveness was amplified when coordinated with British tactics emphasizing fire discipline, overlapping fields of fire, and platoon-level volleys. In comparison, German rifles like the Guha 98, while exceptionally accurate at long range, had a slower bolt cycle and a smaller 5-round magazine. French rifles, including the Lebel 1886 and Berthier 1907, faced similar limitations. Against an SMLE-trained British soldier, these weapons often struggled to match volume and precision in dynamic combat. The combination of mechanical efficiency, ammunition capacity, and trained musketry created a force multiplier far beyond what the numbers alone would suggest. The SML did not merely fire faster, it allowed infantrymen to control the tempo of engagements, dictating when and where shots landed, even under the most stressful conditions. The interwar period reinforced the rifle's reputation. The SMLE Mk3* emerged with minor but practical modifications, smoother bolt operation, improved sights, and enhanced magazine guides, ensuring continued relevance. The British Army, observing the experiences of WWI, emphasized that soldier proficiency with the rifle was as critical as the rifle itself. Musketry schools and battalion drills retained the same intensity. Speed, accuracy, and controlled fire were drilled into every recruit, even as semi-automatic rifles were appearing in other nations' arsenals. Britain's military leadership remained committed to a system that had proven itself under the harshest conditions. By the late 1930s, the SMLE had become both a tool and a symbol. For soldiers, it was familiar, reliable, and deeply integrated into their training and battlefield psychology. This loyalty was not born of nostalgia. It stemmed from repeated validation in combat and a design that married human ergonomics to mechanical excellence. The rifle's utility was evident in imperial policing campaigns in India, the Middle East, and Africa, where environmental extremes exposed weaknesses in other small arms. The SMLE, by contrast, retained function after immersion in mud, exposure to sand, and repeated rapid firing. When war broke out again in 1939, the SMLE was already nearly 4 decades old, yet it remained the backbone of British infantry. During the retreat to Dunkirk in May 1940, soldiers relied on its speed and dependability to cover withdrawals against advancing German panzer and infantry formations. The rifle had survived the evolution of warfare, proving that mechanical sophistication alone was insufficient without training, doctrine, and practical experience. The stage was now set to explore why, even in 1940, British troops were unwilling to exchange this familiar weapon for newer designs, and how the SMLE's characteristics shaped every angle of combat from individual soldier to battlefield strategy. For the individual British soldier in 1940, the SMLE was more than a piece of steel and wood. It was a constant companion under fire. Marching through the sodden fields of northern France, men felt the weight of their packs, the fatigue of long nights, and the ever-present tension of the German advance, but the rifle remained predictable. Its balance against the shoulder, the familiar resistance of the bolt, and the smoothness of its stock under wet hands provided a small but vital sense of control. In the chaos of retreat, soldiers relied on instinct honed through repetitive drills. Pulling the trigger, cycling the bolt, and chambering the next round became second nature, a rhythm that allowed focus amidst panic. Letters and memoirs from the Dunkirk campaign repeatedly mentioned this connection. Men described how the familiar sound of the bolt snapping home reassured them, even as artillery fire shredded the landscape around them. Unlike new semi-automatic rifles, which required constant care and unfamiliar handling, the SMLE's reliability meant soldiers could focus on tactics, not maintenance. Its simplicity allowed them to conserve mental energy, enabling split-second decisions, when to hold, when to fire, and when to fall back. This intimate human connection, trust born of repetition and proven performance, was a critical factor in why soldiers resisted abandoning the SMLE. It was a tool they understood completely, and in combat, understanding equaled survival. The SMLE shaped British infantry tactics more than almost any other weapon in history. The emphasis on rapid aimed fire at moderate ranges allowed platoons to deliver defensive volleys that could disrupt much larger forces. In the retreat to Dunkirk, small units of 10 or 20 men could cover entire roads and hedgerows with firepower that belied their numbers. The rifle's 10-round magazine, combined with the trained mad-minute technique, enabled soldiers to fire up to 30 aimed rounds per minute faster than most Baltic rifles of the era. German reconnaissance reports often noted this. During skirmishes on the outskirts of Dunkirk, German troops mistook bursts of SMLE fire for machine guns, delaying assaults and buying precious time for retreating units. This psychological effect, the perception of overwhelming firepower, was a tactical force multiplier. Commanders relied on these bursts not just to inflict casualties but to control the tempo of engagements, forcing the enemy to react and allowing British units to maneuver under cover. The SMLE, therefore, was not merely a tool of direct combat, it was a linchpin of strategy, allowing retreating forces to survive where less disciplined or slower-firing weapons would have led to catastrophic losses. In addition, the rifle's design favored quick target acquisition and reload under stress. The short bolt throw and cock-and-closing mechanism minimized wasted movement, while the 10-round magazine meant soldiers could maintain continuous fire with minimal interruption. These factors made it ideal for defensive positions during retreats, where pauses between shots could be fatal. The SMLE's integration into doctrine, coupled with soldier proficiency, turned a simple bolt-action rifle into a decisive tactical advantage, illustrating why even in the face of newer firearms, it remained indispensable. At the heart of the SMLE's enduring appeal was its engineering elegance, a combination of simplicity and functionality rarely matched in military rifles of the era. Unlike the German Gehör 98, which employed a cock-and-opening bolt that slowed the firing rhythm, the SML used a cock-and-closing system. This subtle design choice meant the bolt required less effort to chamber the next round, allowing soldiers to maintain a rapid cadence of fire over prolonged engagements. The short bolt throw further minimized motion, enabling more precise follow-up shots and reducing fatigue during continuous operation. The rifle's 10-round magazine, loaded with 5-round stripper clips, also contributed to its tactical superiority. Soldiers could fire longer bursts without stopping to reload, a critical advantage in defensive actions and suppressive fire scenarios. The detachable magazine allowed for practical field maintenance, while the robust construction solid receiver, strong stock, and reliable sights ensured performance in mud, sand, and rain. Even under artillery bombardment and freezing conditions, the SMLE continued to function where other rifles jammed or broke. Finally, its sighting system was intuitive yet precise. The rear ladder sight, coupled with a post-front sight, allowed for quick range estimation and adjustment in the chaos of battle, while other rifles required careful calibration and slower sight adjustments. The SMLE permitted soldiers to respond instantly to changing targets and distances. Combined, these mechanical characteristics made the rifle more than just a tool, they made it a force multiplier, turning individual skill into battlefield efficiency. The SMLE's effectiveness was inseparable from British military training and logistical practices. Every infantryman received intensive musketry instruction, from basic aiming drills to advanced mad-minute exercises. Instructors emphasized repetition, muscle memory, and rhythm, ensuring that under fire a soldier could cycle rounds and fire without conscious thought. By the outbreak of World War II, decades of doctrine ensured that even new recruits could rapidly reach a high standard of proficiency. Logistics reinforced this proficiency. Ammunition was standardized across the British Empire, with .303 British rounds available in vast quantities. Armorers could strip clean and repair the rifles with minimal tools. The SMLE's simplicity meant that mechanical failures were rare, and field repairs were straightforward. Even in chaotic conditions like Dunkirk, Units could maintain operational readiness without reliance on specialized equipment, giving British infantry a practical advantage over enemies whose rifles required more delicate care. The combination of training and supply created a psychological bond between soldier and rifle. The British infantryman trusted that his weapon would function under extreme conditions and that he was capable of mastering it. This confidence translated directly into battlefield effectiveness. The SMLE's reliability, reinforced by institutional support, explains why soldiers were unwilling to replace it with newer, untested firearms even when semi-automatic rifles were becoming more common elsewhere. German officers and soldiers encountered the SMLE in 2 world wars and consistently recorded its intimidating rapid fire. At Mons in 1914, reports noted that the British fire is continuous, swift, and precise, as if manned by a machine. Even in 1940, during the retreat to Dunkirk, German reconnaissance highlighted the devastating efficiency of British riflemen in covering rearguard actions. They observed soldiers laying down sustained, coordinated fire from concealed positions, often holding off numerically superior forces. Enemy analysis focused not only on rate of fire but also on discipline. The SMLE allowed British infantry to maximize their training in musketry. German troops were forced to overestimate British strength, sometimes delaying assaults for fear of ambush. In the eyes of the enemy, the rifle's mechanical reliability, coupled with trained human operation, produced a psychological effect almost as important as the physical casualties it inflicted. This reputation further cemented the SMLE's status as a weapon worth keeping, long after new designs became available elsewhere. The retreat to Dunkirk in late May 1940 represented one of the most chaotic and desperate episodes in British military history. The German blitzkrieg had pierced the French defenses, and the British Expeditionary Force BEF found itself encircled along the northern coast. Roads were clogged with retreating soldiers, refugees, and abandoned equipment. Overhead, Luftwaffe bombers swooped, strafing convoys and villages. In this maelstrom, the SMLE proved more than a relic, it became a lifeline. On the outskirts of Wormhout, a small British rearguard held a narrow hedgerow along a dirt road. 20 men faced a company of advancing German infantry. The order was simple but harrowing. Hold as long as possible to allow the main body to reach Dunkirk's beaches. The soldiers crouched behind sodden earthworks, fingers slick on wooden stocks. The first German scouts appeared through the mist. In one fluid motion, the SMLE bolts snapped home, sending rounds in rapid succession. The fire was sustained, accurate, and deliberate. Each soldier firing not recklessly, but with disciplined rhythm learned over years of musketry training. Eyewitness accounts described the astonishment of the Germans, who paused their advance, convinced they faced machine guns. One report noted that everywhere, the snap of rifles came in waves. It was impossible to gauge the number of men firing. The combination of mechanical reliability, high magazine capacity, and well-trained soldiers allowed a handful of men to delay forces many times their size. Every missed shot was rare. Every hit amplified the psychological pressure. By the time the Germans regrouped, the bulk of the BEF had continued its retreat toward Dunkirk. Meanwhile, other units faced similar tests. At Hasbrouck, British infantry established a defensive perimeter using buildings and hedgerows. In the streets, SMLEs were fired from windows, rooftops, and barricades. Soldiers alternated magazines seamlessly, cycling rounds as if guided by instinct. Artillery explosions shook the streets. Debris rained from shattered buildings. Yet the rifles continued to function. Soldiers reported that the short bolt throw and cock and closing design allowed them to maintain fire while moving and crouching, a vital advantage in urban defensive scenarios. The rate of fire achieved under stress was remarkable. Men trained in the Mad Minute routinely reached 20 aimed shots per minute, and elite shooters, some exceeding 30 rounds, delivered precision volleys that could pin entire German squads. The SMLE, combined with disciplined execution, transformed individual soldiers into a cohesive tactical unit capable of altering the pace of engagement. Even as the main force fled toward Dunkirk's beaches, these small, disciplined pockets of resistance delayed the enemy long enough to save thousands of lives. This was not the product of luck. It was the culmination of design, training, and battlefield experience. The SMLE had been forged in imperial conflicts, tempered in the mud of World War I, and refined through decades of doctrine. In 1940, in the chaos of retreat, it became a tool that allowed British soldiers to fight not just for position but for survival. Their loyalty to the rifle was now vindicated in combat, proving that its speed, reliability, and ergonomic design could still shape the outcome of engagements under the most extreme circumstances. Yet even this heroic defense was only the opening act. The retreat to Dunkirk, spread over miles of roads, towns, and hedgerows, would see countless similar engagements. Each instance reinforced the SMLE's decisive role, its capacity to amplify the effectiveness of individual soldiers, and its uncanny ability to intimidate enemies who underestimated a bolt-action rifle. In the next phase, we examine the continuation of these desperate stands and the moments when the SMLE's advantages were pushed to their absolute limit. As the BEF neared Dunkirk, the scope of the retreat widened, stretching over miles of congested roads, small villages, and open fields. At La Bassée, a handful of British units formed a defensive line along hedgerows and canal banks, facing superior German forces equipped with tanks and automatic weapons. Here, the SMLE's combination of reliability, rate of fire, and trained marksmanship would be tested under maximum stress. A platoon of 30 men, isolated and cut off from reinforcements, held a narrow canal bridge. German infantry attempted to cross in waves, supported by armored vehicles. Each British soldier was armed with the SMLE, and each man was drilled to deliver controlled rapid fire. The first wave of attackers fell to coordinated volleys, the sound of bolt-action rifles snapping, echoing across the water. Observers noted that the Germans, initially confident in their superior numbers, were repeatedly stalled by what appeared to be a continuous hail of bullets, causing disarray and forcing them to deploy artillery to suppress the defenders. The SMLE's design was crucial. Its 10-round magazine allowed continuous fire without the frequent interruptions of the 5-round rifles carried by the German infantry. The short bolt throw and cajon closing action meant soldiers could maintain a high rate of aimed fire while moving along the defensive line or ducking behind cover. Elite shooters, trained in the Mad Minute, achieved 20 to 30 rounds per minute with remarkable accuracy, often hitting multiple targets in a single burst, even under smoke, dust, and falling debris. The rifle continued to function flawlessly, reinforcing the confidence of its users. At Dunkirk's perimeter itself, small British rearguard actions demonstrated how the SMLE could act as both a weapon and a psychological force. In one engagement near Le Pan, 5 riflemen held an open field against a German platoon attempting to flank the main column. Each soldier, using practiced fire sequences, maintained a constant pressure on the enemy. German soldiers later reported confusion, believing machine guns were positioned throughout the area. The combination of disciplined fire, magazine capacity, and ergonomic handling created a scenario where a few men could control dozens of enemy troops, delaying their advance and allowing thousands of soldiers to reach evacuation points. The retreat highlighted another critical feature: the rifle's resilience in varied conditions. Roads were littered with mud, water-filled craters, and abandoned vehicles. Soldiers reported that SMLEs rarely jammed, even after prolonged exposure to rain, mud, and sand. In one diary entry from a corporal at Wormhout, he wrote, "The rifle never failed. It fired round after round when everything else was chaos." This reliability was not incidental. It was the product of over 3 decades of incremental design improvements, from Mk3 to Mk3*, ensuring the rifle could endure the unpredictability of combat. Perhaps the most profound impact of the SMLE was how it multiplied the value of training and discipline. Each soldier's proficiency, honed through years of musketry instruction, turned the rifle into a force amplifier. Leaders could rely on small units to hold key positions longer than expected, and soldiers themselves drew confidence from a weapon that functioned predictably under fire. This combination of technology and human skill turned the chaotic retreat into a series of organized, effective defensive actions. By the time the evacuation began on May 26, 1940, the SMLE had earned its reputation anew. It had allowed disciplined British units to delay a mechanized enemy, protect retreating comrades, and maintain order in the face of overwhelming odds. Across hedgerows, roads, and canals, its rapid fire and reliability became a symbol of British resolve. Even as new semi-automatic rifles were being developed elsewhere, soldiers and commanders alike recognized the unique synergy of design, training, and tactical doctrine embodied in the SMLE. The climax of the Dunkirk retreat illustrated not just the rifle's mechanical superiority but also its human and psychological impact on both the user and the enemy. The old bolt action had transformed from a familiar companion into a decisive instrument of survival, allowing a small beleaguered force to achieve what seemed impossible. As the last soldiers embarked on the beaches, the SMLE's legacy was clear. It was not merely a weapon but a cornerstone of British infantry effectiveness, whose influence would echo through the remainder of World War II. With the retreat concluded, the question shifted from combat performance to consequence. What did the SMLE's steadfast role mean for the men who wielded it, the army that trained them, and the strategies that followed? The aftermath would reveal both the human cost and the enduring tactical lessons of Britain's iconic rifle. The evacuation from Dunkirk, codenamed Operation Dynamo, ended on June 4, 1940, with over 338,000 Allied troops safely transported across the English Channel. The operation was a tactical withdrawal, a strategic defeat in the short term, yet a testament to discipline, coordination, and the effectiveness of the SMLE in delaying German forces. Small units armed with these bolt-action rifles had consistently held key points, long enough to allow convoys of men to march to the beaches under heavy enemy fire. The SMLE's rapid-fire capability and reliability were repeatedly cited in after-action reports as crucial to the survival of retreating troops. Despite being a rifle designed decades earlier, The SMLE outperformed expectations in 1940. Its 10-round magazine, robust construction, and smooth bolt allowed British soldiers to maintain a steady rate of fire, often suppressing numerically superior German infantry. Observers noted that even when exhausted, wet, or facing overwhelming odds, men could rely on their rifles to function precisely. This combination of mechanical dependability and human proficiency created what military historians later called a force multiplier. A small number of soldiers could achieve the effect of a far larger contingent. The human cost, however, was significant. Casualties were heavy among the rearguard units tasked with covering the retreat. Diaries, letters, and official records reveal men who were exhausted and terrified but who found confidence in their rifles. One officer wrote, "Our lads trusted their SMLEs as much as they trusted their training. It was the only constant in the chaos." Soldiers' loyalty to the rifle was not sentimental, it was practical. The rifle saved lives, but it also exacted a toll, as soldiers repeatedly exposed themselves to enemy fire in order to deliver the rapid volleys that slowed the German advance. Strategically, the performance of the SMLE during Dunkirk had broader implications. The British Army, recognizing the value of well-trained troops armed with reliable bolt-action rifles, prioritized the continued production of the SMLE Mk3 and its successor, the No for Mk1, rather than attempting to replace the infantry with untested semi-automatic designs. Military leadership concluded that familiarity, reliability, and doctrine could outweigh technological novelty in the immediate term. This decision shaped the British Army's readiness for later engagements in North Africa, Italy, and Normandy, ensuring that frontline units retained a weapon system they knew inside and out. Beyond Britain, the SMLE's reputation influenced Allied forces and enemy assessments alike. German intelligence reports frequently emphasized the accuracy and rapid fire of British riflemen, citing small unit actions that delayed assaults or forced retreats. Such recognition underscored the psychological as well as tactical advantage of a weapon whose combination of design and human proficiency created the perception of greater force. The rifle had become a symbol of British resilience, trusted by soldiers and feared by enemies in the logistical sphere. The SMLE's continued use simplified supply chains and training programs across the Commonwealth. Standardized .303 ammunition allowed armies in Canada, Australia, India, and South Africa to integrate forces seamlessly. Armorers were familiar with the rifle's construction, enabling rapid maintenance and minimal downtime, even in remote theaters. This universality and practicality reinforced the SMLE's central role in the war effort, demonstrating that a well-understood, reliable weapon could achieve results far beyond its technical specifications. The events at Dunkirk and similar engagements across France in May 1940 ultimately confirmed what generations of soldiers and trainers had known. The SMLE was not obsolete. Its speed, robustness, and compatibility with disciplined, musketry-trained troops allowed it to perform at the highest level, even when newer rifles might have failed in similar conditions. The retreat, though marked by chaos and hardship, but became a stage on which the rifle's practical superiority and enduring tactical value were made indisputable. These lessons laid the groundwork for understanding how a combination of technology, training, and trust could shape outcomes in combat, a theme that would persist as the SMLE continued to serve in theaters far beyond France. Its story was now firmly entwined with the survival, morale, and identity of the British soldier, setting the stage for an even deeper reflection on its human and historical significance. After Dunkirk, the British Army faced the challenge of rebuilding, retraining, and re-equipping its forces. Yet in this process, the SMLE remained central to infantry doctrine. Rather than replace it with semi-automatic rifles, the Army prioritized refining the rifle system that had proven itself under the most extreme conditions. The No for SMLE Lee-Enfield, introduced in 1939, retained the same principles of rapid bolt operation, high magazine capacity, and reliability, while incorporating improvements in sights, manufacturing tolerances, and stock design. Soldiers transitioning to the No found its handling familiar, enabling continued proficiency without retraining from scratch. Across the British Empire, the SMLE's legacy persisted. In Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and India, troops continued to rely on the rifle through 1940, demonstrating that a well-understood and battle-tested weapon often outperforms newer but unproven designs. Its logistical simplicity, standardized ammunition, robust construction, and ease of repair allowed these forces to operate effectively in diverse theaters. From the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Burma, the SMLE was a tool that connected doctrine, training, and reliability, providing a consistent backbone for armies spread across the globe. Historians examining World War II often note the psychological and tactical influence of the SMLE. German intelligence consistently highlighted the precision and speed of British riflemen, and soldiers themselves recognized the rifle as a symbol of discipline and confidence. This perception extended beyond direct battlefield utility. It shaped enemy expectations, often exaggerating the strength of British units. At Dunkirk, accounts describe German troops overestimating the number of defenders due to the rapid and coordinated fire of SMLE-equipped soldiers, buying crucial hours for evacuation and saving thousands of lives. The human element remained inseparable from the rifle's effectiveness. Soldiers trusted the SMLE because it functioned predictably, allowed them to execute familiar drills, and reinforced their confidence in individual and unit performance. Letters and memoirs from veterans emphasize the bond between soldier and rifle, noting that even amid the chaos of retreat or the intensity of sustained combat, the SMLE's reliability provided a measure of control and reassurance. In practical terms, this trust translated into higher morale, better discipline, and increased survivability, all critical factors in a conflict where small, tactical advantages could determine the outcome of an engagement. By the war's end, the SMLE's reputation was secure. Despite the rise of semi-automatic rifles in other armies, it remained a paragon of practical superiority, combining robust engineering, human-centered design, and compatibility with a rigorous training system. Post-war evaluations acknowledged that while technological innovation was important, the interplay of design, doctrine, and soldier proficiency often determined effectiveness more than novelty alone. The SMLE's story became a benchmark for infantry weapon studies, illustrating that a weapon's value is measured not only by mechanical specifications but by how it integrates with the human element on the battlefield. Even decades later, the SMLE retained a mystique among military historians, collectors, and veterans alike. Its long service life from the Boer War through both world wars and into post-war Commonwealth conflicts demonstrated that practicality, reliability, and human compatibility often outweigh the allure of cutting-edge technology. In the aftermath of Dunkirk, the lessons were clear. A well-trained soldier with a trusted rifle could delay an enemy, shape the battlefield, and influence the course of operations in ways that raw numbers or advanced machinery alone could not achieve. The SMLE had survived the crucible of 2 world wars. It had earned loyalty through performance, trust, and adaptability, proving that even an old bolt-action rifle could remain a decisive instrument in modern warfare. The stage was now set to reflect on the enduring significance of this remarkable weapon, its technological ingenuity, and the human stories it enabled, lessons that resonate far beyond the battlefields of northern France. The story of the SMLE is, above all, a story of human ingenuity, trust, and adaptability across decades and continents. This seemingly old bolt-action rifle demonstrated that technology alone does not define battlefield effectiveness. Its design, robust, ergonomic, and reliable, was inseparable from the training, discipline, and doctrine of the men who wielded it. From the mud-soaked trenches of World War I to the desperate rearguards of Dunkirk in 1940, the SMLE amplified human skill, turning individual soldiers into instruments of lethal precision. What made the rifle exceptional was not a single feature, but the synergy of mechanical reliability and human proficiency. The cock-enclosing bolt, the 10-round magazine, and the smooth cycling, these were all technical advantages, yet without disciplined training, repetitive drills, and the confidence instilled in soldiers over years of musketry instruction, these advantages might have remained theoretical. In the hands of well-prepared infantrymen, the SMLE became more than a rifle. It became a lifeline, a force multiplier, and a psychological weapon capable of shaping both the enemy's perception and the outcome of engagements. The Dunkirk retreat exemplifies this truth. Amid chaos, fire, and uncertainty, the SMLE allowed small units to hold ground against superior forces, delay enemy advances, and protect thousands of lives. Its enduring reputation among soldiers and historians alike underscores a profound lesson. The effectiveness of a weapon is inseparable from the culture, training, and trust that surrounds it. A new, technically advanced rifle might promise innovation, but the tested, familiar, and reliable SML delivered results in the crucible of real combat. Ultimately, the SMLE teaches us about the human dimension of warfare. Technology, while crucial, is only part of the equation. Discipline, doctrine, and trust can transform a simple bolt-action rifle into a decisive instrument of survival and victory. Its legacy endures not merely as a piece of military hardware but as a testament to the soldiers who mastered it, the doctrine that refined it, and the battles that defined its enduring place in history. In the annals of warfare, the SMLE stands as proof that practicality, reliability, and human skill often outweigh novelty, forever shaping the way we understand both weapons and the men who wield them.